The moment I stepped into that private dining room, the whispers started. Not after I sat down, not after I spoke. The second they saw me. Have you ever felt a room judge you before you even opened your mouth? Before they knew your name? That was the kind of room this was. Warm gold lighting, white tablecloths so crisp they looked ironed by hand, crystal glasses, silver cutlery, the kind of place where people didn't just eat dinner, they performed it. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. And there I was, Meredith Voss, 68 years old, in a weathered charcoal coat, low black shoes with softened edges, and a plain grey dress that had never once asked anyone for approval. I saw the mother of the bride notice me first. Soraya Dane, 58, as elegant enough to make the room feel like an extension of her. Her smile appeared on cue, but it didn't reach her eyes. Then came her husband, Dramail Dane, 62, broad-shouldered, expensive watch, the kind of man who wore authority like fragrance. He looked me over once, and I could almost hear the conclusion clicking into place in his mind. Not important, not impressive, not his kind of people. Across the room stood my son, Calum Voss, 34, already tense before I'd even reached the table. Beside him was his fiancée, Elira Dane, 31, beautiful, poised, and trying much too hard to pretend nothing was wrong. But something was wrong. You could feel it under the music, under the polite greetings, under the polished glass and folded napkins. Then I heard it, low, careless, cruel. This is his mother. A second whisper followed, wrapped in a little laugh. She looks like she came in through the service entrance. I heard every word, and I smiled, not because it didn't sting, it did, not because I was confused. I wasn't. I smiled because when people decide who you are that quickly, they usually reveal more about themselves than they ever mean to. Calum moved to pull out my chair, but I touched his arm first. A small gesture, stay calm, not yet, because I hadn't come to this dinner to impress anyone. I had come to see the family my son was about to marry into, to look past the manners, past the polished voices, past the expensive surface, and already the truth was arriving faster than the appetizers. Then Dramiel lifted his glass, looked straight at me and said, "Well, this should be interesting." And that was when I knew dinner hadn't really started yet. The first insult didn't sound like an insult. That's how you know it's intentional. "So, Meredith, where are you from?" Soraya's voice was smooth, almost musical, the kind of tone that could pass for polite if you didn't listen closely. But underneath it, measurement, categorization, quiet dismissal already forming before I even answered. I folded my hands lightly on the table. "A small industrial town in the north," I said. Simple, true, no decoration. A pause followed, not curiosity, not interest, judgment. Dramiel leaned back in his chair, one arm draped over the back like he owned not just the seat, but the room itself. "Ah," he said, with a faint smile that didn't bother hiding what it meant. "Humble beginnings." Humble. Funny word. People use it when they don't want to say insignificant out loud. I noticed Calum shift beside me, just slightly. His jaw tightened, but he didn't speak yet. Elira reached for her glass, eyes flicking between us, already sensing the imbalance but not stepping into it. And I simply nodded. Humble can be useful, I said. Dramiel gave a short chuckle. I suppose it teaches resilience or limitation. That was the word he didn't say. The waiter approached, and I glanced at his name tag. Thank you, Lathan, I said as he poured water. He blinked, surprised, then nodded. A small moment, but I felt the table register it, not warmly, just noticing that I wasn't quite behaving the way they expected. Then the questions sharpened. Did you work while raising Kylam? Soraya asked, cutting neatly into her salad. Or, yes. What kind of work? Whatever was needed. Another pause. Dramiel smiled again, thinner this time. And education? I met his gaze. Enough. That answer didn't satisfy him. It irritated him. Good, because now the tone shifted, subtly but unmistakably. The politeness began to crack, revealing something sharper underneath. Elira mentioned Calum did very well for himself, Soraya added. It must be quite a change from how he grew up. There it was. Not curiosity, contrast. Before I could respond, Calum spoke. Mum built everything we had. His voice was steady but tight. For a brief second the room went quiet, and then Dramiel laughed. Not loudly, not rudely, just enough. I'm sure she did her best. Best. That word landed heavier than anything else so far. I turned my head slightly toward Calum. Just a glance, just long enough. Stay quiet. He exhaled slowly and obeyed, because this wasn't his moment. Not yet. The plates were cleared. New ones arrived. The rhythm of the dinner continued, but something had shifted. The air felt thinner now, tighter, like everyone was waiting for the next move, but pretending they weren't. And then Dramiel leaned forward, elbows on the table, eyes locked on me, no more soft edges. So tell me, Meredith. A small pause, sharp, deliberate. What exactly do you do now? I didn't answer, not immediately. Instead I lifted my glass, took a slow sip, let the silence stretch just long enough to become uncomfortable. Then I set it down and smiled, but this time I didn't soften it. The room leaned in, not because they respected me, because they expected something small, something dismissible. Oh, Dramiel, Soraya said, with a light laugh, waving her hand as if smoothing over tension. Don't put her on the spot like that. But her eyes flicked toward me, curious now, measuring again, waiting to see how I would respond. The question didn't disappear. It settled, heavy. I placed my glass down carefully, aligning it with the edge of the plate. Small detail, controlled movement. I work, I said. Short, plain. Dramiel's eyebrow lifted immediately. At what level? There it was again. Level. Not what you do, not what you've built. Where you stand, above or below. I tilted my head slightly, studying him now the same way he'd been studying me all evening, at a level that keeps me busy. Too vague. I saw it irritate him instantly. Good. Because something had shifted, and whether they realized it or not, the conversation wasn't flowing in one direction anymore. It wasn't just them examining me, now I was watching them, and they felt it. Soraya leaned in, her smile tightening just enough to show effort. You must find it difficult, she said carefully, to adjust to environments like this. Environments like this, crystal, wealth, status, as if I were visiting from somewhere lesser. I adjust where necessary, I replied. Another non-answer, another crack in their expectations. Dramiel exhaled through his nose, tapping his fingers lightly against the table. In business, he said, clarity matters. People who can't define their position usually don't have one. A statement, not a question, a test. And still, I didn't take it. Instead, I let a brief silence stretch between us before asking, and calmly, "Dramiel, how long have you been with Virex on group?" That did it. The shift was immediate. His posture straightened. His expression changed, not softer but prouder, grounded, finally a topic where he held authority. 23 years, he said. Senior Operations Director. There it was. Confidence, ownership, identity. I nodded slowly, as if considering something deeper than the words themselves. "And you enjoy your position?" A strange question, too simple. It made Soraya glance at him. Elira leaned forward slightly. Even Kylem's attention sharpened just a fraction. "Of course I do," Dramiel replied, a hint of defensiveness creeping in now. "It's one of the most powerful companies in the sector." I held his gaze. "I imagine it is." 4 words. But this time, they didn't sound passive. They sounded knowing. Something flickered across his face. Brief, uncertain. Gone almost as quickly as it appeared. The waiter arrived with the main course, placing dishes with practiced precision. No one spoke for a moment. Not because there was nothing to say, but because something had started to feel off, different. I picked up my fork, then paused, set it back down, and slowly lifted my eyes. Not scanning the table this time, not observing, focusing directly on Dramiel. And for the first time that night, I didn't look like someone out of place. I looked like someone who had been waiting. What do you even do? This time Dramiel didn't dress it up. No polite framing, no soft edges, just the question, flat, direct, and edged, with something sharper than curiosity. The kind of question meant to corner someone. I'm the kind of question that assumes the answer will be small. The room went quiet again, but not like before. This silence had weight. Even the background music seemed distant now, like it had stepped back to watch. I placed my napkin beside my plate, not rushed, not hesitant, deliberate. You ever notice how people reveal themselves most clearly when they think they're in control? I looked at Calem first. His shoulders were tense, his hands clasped too tightly in his lap. He wasn't looking at Dramiel anymore. He was looking at me, waiting. Then I turned to Elira. Her expression had changed. The polite distance was gone. In its place, uncertainty, not about me but about her parents. Finally, I met Dramiel's eyes. "I've spent most of my life building something," I said. My voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. No one interrupted. Not this time, because something had shifted, and now they felt it too. It started small, I continued. Factories people were selling off, contracts others ignored. Dramiel's fingers stopped tapping the table. A small detail, but telling. "I didn't have connections," I said. "No introductions, no one opening doors." Soraya's smile faded completely now, and no one expecting anything from me. That part lingered, because expectation is what they had been using against me all night. I leaned back slightly in my chair, letting the words settle before continuing. "Just time and patience." Dramiel's jaw tightened. He recognized the language now, not socially, professionally. "You learn something when you build from that position," I added. No one moved. No one spoke. You learn that people rarely look closely at what they've already decided isn't worth their attention." The sentence landed clean, direct, no longer hidden behind politeness. Elira inhaled quietly. Calem didn't move at all now, and Dramiel, for the first time since I walked into that room, looked unsure, just for a second, but it was enough. He leaned forward again, slower this time, more controlled, but the edge in his voice hadn't disappeared, it had sharpened. "What," he said carefully, "do you do?" Each word separate, measured, pushed. I held his gaze, no smile this time, no softness, just clarity, and in that moment the entire evening narrowed to a single point. Every whisper, every glance, every quiet dismissal, all of it led here. I let 1 second pass, then another, and just long enough for the tension to become unbearable. And then I answered. "I own the company you work for." The words didn't echo. They didn't need to. They landed, heavy, final, undeniable. For a second, no one moved. Not the waiter standing near the wall. Not Soraya, whose hand froze mid-reach for her glass. Not Elira, whose breath caught so sharply it was almost audible. And Dramiel? He blinked. Once. Twice. As if the sentence needed time to rearrange itself into something that made sense. But it didn't change. It only settled deeper. Virex and Group, I added calmly. Majority ownership, acquired 18 years ago. There it was. The missing piece. The answer to every question they hadn't thought to ask. Why I wasn't impressed. Why I didn't react. Why I watched more than I spoke. Because I had already seen rooms like this, built rooms like this, outgrown them. Dramiel leaned back slowly, his earlier confidence draining in real time. "That's not possible," he said, but his voice lacked conviction now. It wasn't denial. It was collapse trying to sound like resistance. Calum exhaled, long and quiet, not shock, not surprise, relief. Elira looked between us, her entire understanding of the night unravelling piece by piece. "You never told me," she said softly, to Calum, not me. "I didn't think it mattered," he replied. And that was the truth. I folded my hands again, the same way I had at the beginning of dinner. Nothing about my posture had changed, only their perception had. "I don't introduce myself with it," I said. People are usually more honest before they know." That sentence did more damage than the reveal itself, because now there was no escaping it. Every word they had spoken earlier still existed, untouched, unedited, and now fully understood. Aftermath, consequences unfold. The dinner ended differently than it began. No laughter, no extended conversation, no pretense left to maintain. Dramiel attempted recovery, shifting tone, offering stiff respect, trying to reframe the evening as a misunderstanding. But authority, once exposed as arrogance, doesn't rebuild easily. Within a week, reality followed. Virexon Group had already been conducting internal behavioural audits among senior leadership. Not because of the dinner, but because patterns always surface, eventually. Dramiel's conduct, both professionally and personally, came under review. Reports that once seemed minor gained new weight. Complaints that had been overlooked were reconsidered. He wasn't immediately dismissed, but his influence narrowed. Projects reassigned. Decisions second-guessed, reputation fractured. Soraya reached out twice, first with apology, then with invitation. Both were acknowledged, neither were accepted. Elira faced something quieter, but heavier, not public consequence, but personal reflection. Her silence at the table stayed with her. Conversations with Calum grew more honest, less comfortable. Not broken, but changed. And Calum, he stopped trying to balance two worlds, because now he didn't have to. Final resolution. A few weeks later, I walked through one of the original factory sites. Same coat, His same shoes, nothing different on the surface. Workers moved around me without ceremony. One of them nodded. "Morning, Miss Voss." I nodded back. No spectacle, no performance, just recognition where it mattered. Calum joined me near the loading area, hands in his pockets, more at ease than I'd seen him in a long time. He glanced at me. "You could have told them the second you walked in." I allowed myself a small smile. "They had already decided who I was," I said. He nodded slowly, and this time he understood, not just the words, the reason behind them. We stood there for a moment, watching the place run. Steel, motion, rhythm, something built over time, not assumed, not borrowed, earned. And as we turned to walk, nothing needed to be proven anymore, because the truth had already done its work.